The situation in eastern Congo is dire, with intensified fighting between M23 rebels and the Congolese army forcing civilians to flee to Nzulo camp for displaced persons near Goma. Now, the conflict, involving over 100 armed groups, has led to the displacement of more than 237,000 people this year, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in the region. The M23 rebels have recently taken control of key towns, including Minova and Masisi, cutting off supply routes to Goma. This decade-long conflict over the mineral-rich region continues to create immense challenges for the local population and also requires urgent attention from the international community. Now, to unpack what is going on in Goma and Congo's future, I am joined by two guests. The first one is Dr. Claude Kabemba. He's the Executive Director, Southern Africa Resource Watch from Kinshasa, DRC. And also we have Michela Wrong. She is a British journalist and author in London. And Michela Wrong is she actually has a deep connection to the Democratic Republic of Congo through her extensive reporting and writing on African politics and history. Thank you so much for joining us, Michela and Dr. Kabemba.
It's a pleasure.
All right, let me begin with you, Dr. Kabemba, if you can hear me. Now, recent reports indicate that M23 rebels have seized strategic towns like Minova, Masisi, and Sake, edging closer to Goma, a city of 2 million people. What are the immediate implications of these advances for the local population?
Look, war is bad for civilians. It kills them, it displaces them. And the disadvances of M23 has started 3 years ago. And as they move through the territories of the Democratic Republic of Congo, people have been moving up and down. Every time they take a locality, people move, then people will return, some will never return. That's why we have so many camps in very bad conditions of displaced, internally displaced communities around the entire east part of the DRC. So it simply means, that the war displaced people, put them in very bad conditions, and as you know, contrary to what is happening to other internally displaced people in some countries in the world, in the DRC, these displaced Congolese have been ignored, have been left by the international community. They don't receive enough support. So really, we are seeing suffering for the ordinary Congolese people who are being displaced and killed.
Oh, okay. Now, over to you, Michela. Now, you have actually dedicated significant portions of your career to studying and also reporting on the DRC. What personal experiences or observations have most profoundly shaped your understanding of the conflict going on at the moment?
Well, I think the way I see it, but I'm sure Dr. Kabemba would agree, is that this is the one in a series of crises. Really, the roots of this crisis go back to the 1990s, when you first got Rwandan-backed rebels, groups of rebels that, in fact, the AFDL was a big group of rebels that was actually formed by Rwanda, supported by Uganda, going into eastern DRC. It was called Zaire at the time, and it was to break up the camps of Rwandan Hutus who had fled there after the 1994 genocide. Yeah. And while those forces were in the country, Rwanda and Uganda ended up enriching themselves a great deal from Congo's mineral wealth, because all of that area is very rich in minerals. And I think ever since the late 1990s, what you've seen is there's been a repetition of rebel groups that are made up often of Congolese Tutsis, who are really their allegiance is with Kigali rather than with Kinshasa. They are equipped, armed, and supported by Rwanda. intervening in Eastern Congo. So this is an international crisis. It's not a local crisis. And one of the issues is really why the international community is not putting more pressure on Rwanda, which could stop this intervention as if it wanted to, but it simply doesn't want to because it's benefiting from it.
Okay. Now, in one of your books, In the Footsteps of Mr. Kurtz, you detailed the looting of Zaire by Mobutu Sese Seko. How do you think Mobutu's era shaped the DRC's current governance challenges? Are there any parallels, between his rule and also the leadership dynamics today?
I think there are some direct historical links because Mobutu, because he, towards the end of his rule, he didn't feel safe on his throne, and he was very afraid of an army coup, of being toppled in a military coup by his own army. So he basically undermined his own army. He didn't. The Congolese troops were very rarely paid. He created all these different competing factions within the army. The generals were sort of competing against one another. Mobutu played the game of divide and rule. And what that meant was that when there was a really serious intervention, an invasion by rebel groups supported by Rwanda in 1996, 1997, what you saw is that army just folded. And I think that's been the problem with Congo ever since, that the Congolese army is incapable of protecting Congo's sovereign borders. And so you have these repeated infiltrations, not just by the Rwandans, but the Rwandans are the key offenders. But you've also had Ugandan forces going in, you've had Burundian forces going in, because the Congolese army cannot protect Congo, cannot provide national sovereignty, cannot assure national sovereignty. So the roots of that crisis definitely lie in the Mobutu era, which I wrote about in my book.
Okay. Now, back to you, Dr. Kabemba. Now, Michela did say that it's an international crisis and that not much pressure is actually put into it by the international organizations. Now, the United Nations, Organization Stabilization Mission in the DRC, that's MONUSCO, has been present in the region for years. How effective would you say that they have been in maintaining peace and security in the region?
Let me just come back to the question of Mobutu before I respond to that.
Please go ahead.
Mobutu might have been a problem for 32 years, where he failed to build a functional state, but put up a more criminal state characterized by deep corruption. But the real cause and the problem of Congo started with the colonization of the DRC. As you know from Berlin Conference in 1885, Congo was disputed and was given to Belgium as to guide Congo for the international community. Congo has been set up as a space for international trade to the resources of the Congo. And that problem has never been resolved. That's why even today, the international community and those who do not put pressure on Rwanda and those who do not want the Congo to build a strong state, they still believe that it's a space for everyone that can come in and collect this and exploit these resources. As you know, Congo is a monopoly of Western powers from 1885 to 1960 up to after the Cold War. Today, what we are seeing is that it's not only the space for Western powers, but we are also seeing the new powers. China is in there to extract, but African regional countries, they've all said this is a space where everyone is coming. So the Ugandans and the Rwandese and many others are doing what the West have been doing for so many centuries and what China is doing. So Congo has been set up as an empty space to exploit these resources until the Congolese take responsibility and put up a capable state that protects people, borders, and the resources. There will always be people who want to control those resources, and that's what is happening now. On the MONUSCO has been there since is the biggest United Nations peacekeeping force in the world. And you remember that in 1960, again, Congo was the first country that received the United Nations peacekeeping force. So Congo has seen the United Nations sending peacekeeping, but this peacekeeping force have not really helped to resolve the Congolese problem. One of the biggest questions that has been raised about the MONUSCO is that how do we keep peace when you are not interfering and fighting the rebels? Because they just simply protect, and as the rebels advances, they also are being pushed back. They don't fight. They are not allowed to do that, which I think is problematic. That's why they've not been effective. If they were effective after all these years, they should have been really end all these militia groups that are in that bush. They would have really put up a strong military presence, so that Uganda, Rwanda, or any other countries have got difficulties to enter Congo. This is an international peacekeeping force, but which is not properly equipped to stop the rebels' advances. And in fact, sometimes they say the rebels have got far better arms than the United Peacekeeping Force. So you just see where the problem is. My sense is that the MONUSCO is also politicized, is not keeping interest of some powers, and until MONUSCO is a really neutral force that is giving all the mandate to stop that advancement of the rebels, that will see really the M23 movement advancing quite rapidly now. And look, it's very difficult for the Congolese army to stop this. The Congolese army has always been in difficulties, badly equipped, badly organized, serious corruption, serious state incapacity to give them what they want. So we are facing here simply a state that is not functional, and you can't fight that war when you are not organized.
Okay. Now, Dr. Kabemba, you talked about, let's go back to, what you said about Congo being given to Belgium, and you talked about, resources and all that. Now, Belgium, as we know, has actually launched a criminal investigation into allegations, that multi-organizations like Apple has knowingly sourced blood minerals from the DRC. So what does this imply about the responsibility of multinational corporations in conflict zones?
It simply shows you that businesses that operate in Congo and that want to source resources from Congo do not have a human face. They don't care. That's why the war has been maintained by the resources of the Congo. Those militia groups will not continue to survive without access to those resources. M23 cannot survive without access to those resources. And the fact that those resources are available and they can be accessed and put on the international market and anybody can purchase them simply demonstrate that the international community norms and standards that have been set out there are not really in the interest of the people. They are, in this case, they're not in the interest of the Congolese people. The east part of the country is a country very rich with coltan, or gold, timber, and coltan is a metal that is important for electronics. Coltan is an important metal that goes into military armament. So the entire problem of this war is who controls the resources. And with the competition today between China, the United States, the West, to access this resource, control them for dominance, is simply exacerbating the conflict that we are seeing, unless the international community is really serious, which I don't think it is. We'll have this war continuing.
All right, let's hear, from Michela. Let's have your thoughts on, Western corporations, also being accused of profiting from the DRC's resources at the expense of local communities.
Well, I think that's a very interesting court case that is being brought, and I think it's a good thing because it will make companies, these huge multinationals and these software companies, think a little bit harder about where they're getting their product from. I think, what we saw in the last few decades was an attempt to make sure that the metals coming out of Eastern Congo we're not blood metals, if we can call them that, like we talk about blood diamonds. And there was a tagging, a whole system put in place that was supposed to ensure that that smuggled coltan and these smuggled minerals were not going into world marketplaces. People knew where they were coming from. It has clearly failed. And human rights organizations like Global Witness have written about this in great detail, great length. And we know that at the moment, the Rubaya mine, which is one of the mines in that part, in the Kivus, in eastern Congo, which produces something like a third of the world's coltan, which is that you need for your phones and your laptops and your electric vehicles, batteries. That is now becoming, the smuggling from there is really well organized now, and it's benefiting the M23, and it's benefiting Rwanda, and the processing has been logged in great detail by the UN, which is writing regular reports on this kind of thing, and it's possible to read these reports and see what is happening. So it's very clear that smuggling is part of this problem. I personally don't think that the minerals explain everything that is going on in Eastern Congo. When I speak to analyst friends and diplomat friends, they will sort of say there's definitely an element of greed for the resources that you find in Eastern Congo, but that's not the only story. It is also an attempt by Rwandan President Paul Kagame to sort of stamp his brand on the Great Lakes and show that he is the leader in the Great Lakes that people have to listen to and take into consideration. If we look back to when this crisis first blew up in early 2021, one of the triggers for it seems to have been that there were deals being done between Yoweri Museveni, the Ugandan leader, and Felix Tshisekedi in Congo, the Congolese president, that sideswiped and ignored Paul Kagame. And it was, they were signing deals about roads that were going to be built, that were going to enable produce from Eastern Congo to go out and go to the east, to the coast and Eastern Africa, and be exported without going via Rwanda. And Rwanda was being ignored. And I think Paul Kagame has become very used to being the leader in the Great Lakes that everybody listens to, everybody consults, and everybody includes in every deal. And I think that is why the M23, which had been dormant up till then, it had been very active in 2012, 2013, and then it suddenly had gone quiet because the international community had said, this is enough, you have to stop. We were in a very similar situation in 2012, 2013, where the M23 had encircled Goma. And at that point, the international community said, this is enough. We're not having this anymore. And it pulled the plug on the international aid that it sends to Rwanda every year. And I think that the trigger for this new activity by the M23 was Paul Kagame's irritation and anger at seeing that he was being ignored by his neighbors, namely Uganda and Congo.
Well, Michela, now speaking of, Paul Kagame, being ignored, you've been critical of oversimplified Western perspectives on African issues, and the DRC's conflict, often receives far less attention in the international media compared to crises everywhere or elsewhere. What are the most harmful misconceptions, about the DRC that persist in global discourse?
Well, I think there are so many of them. I think one of the depictions of Congo, and Claude will be familiar with this, is that there's this, it's quite a complicated conflict going on in Eastern Congo, and it involves many different rebel groups with different acronyms, and it's got a long history. And people don't like to engage with acronyms. They don't like to engage with a conflict which involves, several countries, because several countries, they don't really know where they are located geographically, and lots of organizations with acronyms. And I think there's a sort of failure, a laziness, an intellectual failure to want to engage with these kind of the conflicts. And it seems very far away. Here in Europe, people are concerned with Ukraine and Russia's position there and its encroaching military intervention in Ukraine. They're also concerned about Gaza, which they see on their screens every day. Congo, it's a long way away for them, and they find it hard to understand what's going on. And I think one of the problems then is that then you get these fake narratives being peddled. And for example, I would say that one of the fake narratives that is being peddled is that this is, and this comes straight from Kigali, straight from Rwanda, is that the reason the M23 are active in Eastern Congo is to protect Congolese Tutsis who are in danger of being wiped out in a second genocide. And Congolese Tutsis are definitely in danger in Eastern Congo, but it is because of what the M23 has initiated, the violence it has unleashed, and the anger and the suspicion it has created in the communities of Eastern Congo towards Tutsis living in that area. So the M23 is to blame for this toxic atmosphere in the East right now.
Okay. Now, Dr. Kabemba, this conflict, has led to the displacement of over 7 million people, and it has created a massive humanitarian crisis. What are the most pressing challenges faced by these displaced populations?
Look, I think it's the number has been, it's a much bigger number than that, my sense. I think you remember this conflict has been going on, it's never finished for the past 30 years. They've never been a stop to this war. So the Congolese people in the east part of the country have been experiencing this war for a very long time, and the damage has been massive.
So do you have an idea of what the number is now?
No, I think nobody will give you that number because nobody has really done a correct calculation of the effective. People, what the number they're giving, 7 million. We've been talking about 5 million since 1998, 2001. And this was really displaced so many people, killed so many. And there's nobody, really nobody who does thorough work to understand the impact of this conflict on the Congolese people. And that also demonstrates really the big neglect that Congo has received from the international community. I think if the international community has the capacity that we have, and we would have stopped this war. Now, the people of the Congo need support, and they need support first and foremost from their state. And the biggest problem in the Congo, and as long as we do not fix this problem, we will always have some of these things coming up, is to build a strong Congolese state. Without that, a state that is functional, we will have this problem. The M23 is doing what it is because does not face a capable state, a capable army. Regional powers, being Rwanda, being Uganda, they can enter and come out as they want because there's no state. So the Congolese people, not just in the east, but across that vast country, need a functional state. If we are going to help Congo, on a serious note, the international community must mobilize to help build the state. And the state is built when people have a government that they elect and that support them in return. So internally, there's a problem of cohesion that we need to resolve, Congolese need to resolve. Secondly, I think those people also need to ensure that they are protected from foreign interference from the region, including Uganda, Rwanda armies. The rebels and people also need a strong leadership from both Congo, from Rwanda, from Uganda, and from the M23. I think
Hello, Dr. Kabemba.
War at the end of the war, and 6 has only brought in very short-term solutions. What is the long-term solution? I think that was the Congolese people asking.
Yeah.
And where will that long-term solution come from? It has to come from Congolese themselves. I think there is need for support to build a state and build cohesion within Congolese society. And they can do, I think they've got the capacity, when given that opportunity, to end this war and end it forever. But also, that just leaving the Congo as a space to exploit resources almost for free. Remember, that coltan moves out of the Congo for free, almost. The Congolese people that extract that metal, they are paid peanuts. Their labor is not compensated.
All right, but Dr. Kabemba, the Jacquemines, have also been accused of corruption and mismanagement. They've been accused of millions of dollars have also reportedly been unaccounted for, So the mineral wealth, controlled by them is said to also attract both rebel and foreign powers. So to what extent does, the competition over resources managed by them, that's the Jacquemine, contribute to the ongoing violence in the Congo, in the Eastern Congo?
Look, Jacquemines controls minerals in the south of the DRC. And that is cobalt and copper. As you know, today Congo produces 70% of the world cobalt. And today the electrical batteries, they need Congolese cobalt. And the world cannot move forward in a sustainable manner without Congolese cobalt. So it's an important, again, this is in the south. Jacquemine has got nothing to do with coltan that is being managed. And remember, coltan in the east where the war is being extracted in an artisanal manner. There is no industrial extraction of coltan. It's people, labor of people, women and men that extract that coltan that enters the international market. But for Jacquemines, definitely there is so much disorganization also in the management of revenues from cobalt and copper. There is a big artisanal mining also there, very disorganized, which has been captured by the Chinese and very militarized today. So we are having problems. So when you see the problem in the east, that's war. We are also in the Congo having other problems of management of the resources under the control of the Congolese state. But in the east, we are having war. And the problem of war, that whoever controls those resources, extract them the way they want. As they say, Rubaya, we just had the UN report that all the 120 million ton of cobalt, coltan is going through Rwanda and has been locked up for decades. So we are having a problem of governance. That's what I'm telling you. We're having a problem of state capacity. We're having a problem of cohesion. We're having a problem of corruption that we need to solve internally first. But that does not give red rights for Uganda or for Rwanda to support a conflict internal Congo and push it and support the M23. But my sense really, and this is, we need, the international community needs to come clean and decide really, because Congo will need full support from the international community to build a functional state. I keep repeating it. Without that, the Congolese people, MONUSCO is there, is playing international politics. We need a Congolese state that can protect, and we need Congolese to hold other state agents like Jacquemines to account in terms of the other resources that the Congo has.
Absolutely. So let's hear, from Michela, same question. Do you think that the partnership between the Jacquemines and the international corporations to extract resources have been more exploitative than beneficial for the DRC?
If you don't mind, I won't answer that because I see it as a sort of a question of, I think Claude already answered it. And also, I think what's going on in the East is very particular to the East. And really the solution, Claude's been talking about the need for the international community to help build a coherent and corruption-free and effective state. And I completely agree with him. But I think at the moment, we have a very pressing crisis in the Eastern Congo. We have the M23 just put out a statement earlier today saying they are going to seize Goma and telling MONUSCO and SADC troops to stay out and let them go in and take Goma. And, we're talking about an invasion that is basically being organized by one of Congo's neighboring countries, Rwanda, which is heavily aid dependent. And the international community has repeatedly decried the role that Rwanda is playing, repeatedly said that it knows that Rwanda is arming the M23. And we need to see the international community put, not just make fine statements. It needs to actually pull aid on Rwanda. Rwanda is heavily aid dependent. It is not a resource-rich country. It's a very poor country, very small, poor country dependent on foreign aid. And I think we have a very pressing international crisis in the East right now. And I think the Jekamin's issue is really interesting, but it's a bigger issue and it's not got the urgency.
It's not connected.
Of the East. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's hear your final thought, Dr. Kabemba.
My final thought is that we need to prevent M23 taking Goma, because it might bring a lot of suffering for the people. It's the calm of 2 million. There is important, we might want to push people to talk, because I think there is a very need for negotiations. Look, this is not the first time we are facing this problem. We've been facing this since 1996, as I said. We need to find a final solution. And that final solution needs to come from the regional powers, the AU, and the international community. I think we need the international community, include the AU, SADC, and the East African region, needs to send a clear message that the war must stop. And we should prevent the takeover of Goma by the M23 and create space for people to talk to each other. There cannot be peace in Congo through military, because we've seen whoever win by arms, there is another armed groups that stand. There are thousands, dozens of militia groups that can be organized in the Congo. We need to really negotiate, find a strong solution, try to find a regional cooperation, regional economy. There was a CEPGL before, which brought together Burundi, Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, because there is there's so many multifaceted problems to this conflict. There is the colonial thing, there is the problem of the regional countries wanting to extract, there is a problem in the Congolese state, there is ethnic problems, there is land problems. There are all these intertwined problems that we need a forum. And I've spoken before that we need an international conference on peace and security for the Congo and create a Marshall Plan for Congo by the international community. Congo is served the world. Remember, it's Congo that provided, not served, but Congo has been used for many things in the world. The atomic bomb was the Congo.
Okay.
Today, the electrical vehicles, it's Congo. The electronics is Congo. Everything Congo plays a role and is a solution for the country climate change. Congo has got the biggest forest that is important for climate change. Congo has got all these resources. Congo is a solution for many things. And for Congo to play that solution role, we need a peaceful, secured Congo, and the international community has got the means to do that. But I think there is just too much politics around Congo that they don't want to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for such a wonderful and interesting conversation. Dr. Claude Kabemba, Executive Director, Southern Africa, Southern African Resource Watch from Kinshasa, and also Michela Wrong. She's a British journalist and author in the UK. We appreciate you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.